tool and I have used in my opinions. When you talk about ecological integrity, what does it mean for judges? Can you split the environment? Can you have a specialized judge on one side of the river, but not on the other side of the river? What about ecosystems? Are you going to split this? Are you going to have specialized judge for one biome and not for the other biome? So those are issues that need to be addressed, and I have not seen them being addressed. So one of the tasks, Jay, of the Institute is to address the whole picture, not just the aspects of the picture that we like. The very good examples in Brazil, good examples in India, good examples in Vermont, but also, even in Brazil, we have both federal and state specialized courts, but we have some that are not performing well. I will not name names, but there are issues we don't talk about them, and we do need to talk about them.
So I have another question about your region, but it's also applicable in some other regions of the world as well. It's increasingly the case that national courts are not the last tribunal with the last word. We have more and more regional and international bodies that are taking up cases when the national courts don't do their job. There's been a recent empirical study done, it was published in Cornell Law Review, showing that compliance is lowest with decisions of the regional bodies when the decisions are addressed to the national judiciaries and not to the executive or the legislative branches. So how do we, on the international tribunals, communicate better to national judges to get better compliance?
Well, I think this depends on whether the country is a federal state or a non-federal state. Because if it's a federal state, as you know, the experience in Latin America is that the federal court system decides, I should be very careful with my words here, decides in a more technical way and perhaps in a more pro-environment way than state courts. Because state courts can be more easily captured by state vested interest. That's not the case with the federal courts, and that's why the federal courts have so much opposition, because it takes away power from the vested interests in those states. And it's usually someone that, in Latin America that comes from a different region and doesn't have the type of family relations or attachment to whatever vested interests exist in that place. And I cannot give an answer in respect to the international bodies, except that I do favor international courts. And I don't see why human rights and the environment should not be taken to international courts. And we national judges should not feel that that we are now second-class citizens. The opposite. We have reached maturity. We have reached civilization, so to speak. Thank you.
So we do have one more speaker, Tonio Boza. However, we also have a break coming up at 3:30. So leave it to Tony whether to start now.
Break is more important than my talk. Break is more important than my talk.
Anyone who knows Tony will disagree with this as well.
What? Hey, the boss. He's the boss.
Well, you could give a sample.
Okay, we start. The beauty. Are you still there, Mary? I jump around when I talk. The beauty of talking after Jay, after Antonio, and after the giant that is Nick Robinson is that I do not have to say anything anymore. I would just entertain you. I was going to sing to you.
Yes.
But then I promised Lynn I will sing to her tonight. So I will just entertain you with a few stories. One story. First, I will tell you the story of paintings on the cave walls. And then I'll tell you the story of the little Kalikasan, part of what I've done. And then, what's more important is what we will do together. Meredith, you have to excuse me. You just have to look at your back. Turn around. First, paintings on the cave walls. Once upon a time, there was a group of islands, so rich and so beautiful. It was called the Perla del Mar de Oriente. Do you call that? Spanish speaking? Pearl
of the
Oriental
Seas.
It was so rich. Flora, fauna, the seas were teeming with fish. The land was rich. You just throw away a seed, it will grow tomorrow. So people were happy. They were not materially wealthy, but they had family, they had a lot of leisure. They were happy with what they were doing. They only worked a few hours a day. One day, men from foreign lands came, and then they started taking out all the fish, cutting down all the trees, poisoning the waters, poisoning the air. And then they taught the natives that this is what progress and development is all about. So, everything became so dirty. One man resented all of this, and he walked up the mountain. He went to the forest, lived like a hermit, and lived in a cave. That's it. So, many years later he died. After he had died, children went up the mountain, and they saw the cave. So they entered the cave. It was dark. On the left side of the cave there were paintings, beautiful paintings of how beautiful his home was. In the inner side of the cave, there were also paintings of how ugly his world, his home had become, and all in the name of economic progress and development. Now, on the right side of the cave, towards where the light was, towards where the mouth of the cave was, there were unfinished sketches. My friends, perhaps each one of us is an artist. We are all painting stories of our own lives. And all of us here are lawyers. We have words as our paintbrushes, law as our medium, and the courts and the tribunals are the canvas of our art. My friends, we have seen the past. We see the present, and it has become so ugly. It has become unrecognizably ugly. And then there are unfinished sketches of what the future is going to be. As it is, if the present is any judge for the future, we're very in trouble. Now, I don't know what the future is going to look like. I don't know. I do not have the gift of foresight. But I only know two things. We cannot paint the future using the same paint brushes that we used in the past and that we are using in the present, because those are all worn out already. One, what is our paint brushes? Words. Number one, what is the environment? Anybody? What is the environment? We're all environmental lawyers. I ask even judges, what is the environment? Just the surrounding the wall is your environment? Or those chandelier is your environment? No, my friends. Unless we redefine the word environment to mean something more serious. My friends, and number two, the brush of economic development. What is economic development? First, environment. Is it about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees? No, my friends, it is about life and the sources of life, of land, air, and water. Easy to remember. L-A-W. Hi, Dinah. They are also the vital organs of life. where the land, where the trees and the forests are the heart and the lungs of the earth, without which there is no oxygen, without which there is no carbon dioxide, oxygen. We don't breathe. The land and the soil is the skin and the flesh of the earth from whence we get our food. Without soil, we have nothing. And the sea and the rivers are the blood and the blood streams of life. You know, the analogy is almost perfect. 70% of our body and 70% of the earth is made up of salty water. You remove one of L or A or W, or you destroy or poison any one of them, you have a big problem. Antonio was talking about it. We have to internalize that, because once we understand that the environment is about life and the sources of life, of land, air, and water, everything else becomes easy. We are not going to talk about infrastructure, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is building. No, we're going, how does it affect the water? If it affects the water, then it affects my life, because I'm going to drink from that water. 2. Oh, and the economics, somebody was said, is the minor subsidiary of the environment, of the ecology. Why? Because without water, you can have all the money, I can have all the water. I won't give you water. You can drink your money. 2. Development. My friends, my problem with the word development is that it is a word that nobody understands, but everybody uses. Everybody pretends to understand, but nobody seems to understand. This is about, development has been equated with consumption, with how much a country consumes. Is it about consumption? So the bigger your income is, the more you consume electricity, the more developed you are. Wrong. Is America a developed economy? Sorry about the Americans. Sorry, I do not mean for the people, but the US, Britain, Japan, are they developed economies? Are they? Answer. Nobody wants to answer, but we call them the developed economies. Remember? We call them the developed economies. What is economics? Economics is defined as the efficient use of scarce resources. Textbook definition. But 5% of the people consume 30% of the world's resources. And look at that. The Brits, they throw away, they do not eat, my friends. They throw away $20 billion worth of food a year. America throws away $100 billion worth of food a year. And Japan throws away $101 billion worth of food a year. And you call them developed? No, they're wasteful. By the way, those of you English speaking, you look at the dictionary, the synonym of consumption has 2 other synonyms. One is waste, and the other one is tuberculosis. Charles Dickens. And it is a perfect example, it is a perfect analogy. It is a perfect analogy because tuberculosis is tubercle bacilli, the bacteria that eats the living tissues of the human body. In the same manner that the tubercle bacilli called Homo sapiens is eating away at the vital organs of life, of the earth. So, studies have all shown that if we copy the lifestyle of an average American of 300 million people, of the model that we're using as a developed country, we will need 5 Earths. Sheila, how many Earths do we have? 1 only. So, wrong model. We've been copying the wrong model after all. So, to call them a developed economy, considering that economics is the efficient use of scarce resources, is a contradiction of terms. It's an oxymoron. Wrong. Wrong words. So, my friends, first, developed and developing. I have made it a point to disrupt any proceeding where they use the word developed and developing in relation to the countries. I say no. Call them over-consuming countries and us low-consuming countries. We should copy. We should not copy them. They should copy us. Because, as Sheila was saying, there's only one Earth. When you change words, you change meanings. When you change meanings, eventually, perhaps you change mindsets. From the economics of consumption, it is time to shift to 180 degrees the economics of conservation, protection, and restoration. CPR, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation of the vital organs of life, of land, air, and water. Did they call it green economics? I don't like to use the word green economics because when you say green lawyer, they look at us as if we belong to Mars, we came from Mars. We belong to the most conservative profession, next only to the prostitutes, we belong to the most conservative profession. Oh, now I'll call back to you about the Philippines. This is what happened to the Philippines because of the paradigm of consumption. That's a small country. But those of you from Ecuador, I do not mean any offense, we are one of the 17 mega diversity countries. We are richer than the Galapagos Islands, multiplied tenfold. That comes from a science book. Tenfold, not just equal, but we're tenfold. That comes from Lawrence Heaney of the University of Chicago. But look at the paradigm of extraction and consumption. 100 years. I remember Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 years of solitude. In this case, 100 years of stupidity, 100 years of stupidity. Look at that. The forest, in less than 100 years. Using that paradigm. And then we cut down the trees, we cut down the capital, we sell it to America, we sell it to Japan, and then we call it profit. We were actually depleting the natural capital. My friends, we are all storytellers. We tell the story of our clients, we tell the story, in our case, our clients are the trees and the forest and the heart and the lungs of the earth. I was also I was a crazy young lawyer. I still am, a little bit crazier now. But I saw this, and what can I do? I was a very young lawyer, and I said, we had 800,000 hectares left of the remaining virgin forest. Government granted logging concessions equivalent to 4 million hectares. What can I do? I can only tell a story. But I can tell a story in a courtroom where the process is organized, is orderly, and so when, of course, it was dismissed in the lower court, immediately dismissed. I wasn't even given a hearing. We went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you know, what's interesting about that? It was the children that were suing for future generations. So this is the nice conversation, the nice lines. Sheila, you're the closest thing. It says, such a right. There was a question of whether the children had the right. Can you read that, please?
Such a right belongs to a different category of rights altogether, for it concerns nothing less than self-preservation and self-perpetuation, a right that predates all governments and constitutions. As a matter of fact, these basic rights need not even be written in the Constitution, for they are assumed to exist from the inception of humankind.
And they said that they were smart today. And then they said, if they're not specially mentioned in this Constitution, it is because Jay, can you read that? The fear of the framers, there.
If they are now specially mentioned in the fundamental law of the land, it is because, unless it is written in the Constitution itself, the day would not be too far when all else would be lost, not only for this generation, but also for succeeding generations which stand to inherit nothing but a parched earth incapable of sustaining life.
My friend, that was 20 years ago. It rang true 20 years ago. It rings truer even now. And believe it or not, 20, 30 years from now, and those of us who've been in this know that it's going to become a reality. It already is. I mean, the United States is undergoing, what, 80% of the country is undergoing drought. And then rich as our land is, our sea is even richer. This is, what is Patrice? This is an FAO study, 4,000 pages, thereabouts. Where is the richest marine waters on earth? Oh, it's there, in the group of islands. There, in the Sulu-Sulawesi Marine Triangle. It runs from the Philippines down to Malaysia, across to Indonesia. But the center of marine biodiversity on earth is that group of islands that looks like a mouse, a skeleton of a mouse. And that, at the apex of that, the red part, is the richest marine waters on earth. And that part there, that apex, is the Manila Bay. And what have we done? See, all of these are studies. Central Philippines is the richest marine waters on earth. Center of marine biodiversity. This is Manila Bay. This is Manila. I will not tell you because you won't have dinner if I told you how dirty it was. It still is. But then again, I can only tell a story. There is a lack of political will to do anything. So then, in 1999, I filed a case, and I take this opportunity. January 1999, I filed a case. There was only one man who believed in what I was doing. That man is here today. Professor Nicholas Robinson. Please give him a big hand. I just plucked out one line from a 1977 law. Nobody ever even bothered to read that law. And then I just plucked out one line. And then it became the basis of the mandamus. Anyway, after 3 years or almost 4 years, all the way to the Supreme Court, after 10 years I won. Imagine 10 years of litigation. All you get is a piece of paper that says, you have to clean Manila Bay. Something so obvious in the first place. They say that it's the difference between the obscure and the obvious. The obscure gets figured out sooner or later. It is the obvious that takes a lot longer. So, what did it do? What did it do? One is I was able to tell a story. If that was the only thing that I achieved, I was able to tell a story in a manner that is orderly, and that's the beauty of courtroom. It is in a